event. Feel free to ask questions in the chat and do note if they're for a particular guest. So let's get started. I'm Gabrielle Kent. I worked in game development for 6 years, lectured in game design for another 16, and have been organising and hosting games conferences and festivals for the past 20 years. I'm now the author of 8 books, including the Knights and Bikes series based on the awesome video game by Foam Sword Games. Now, you probably think of writers first when it comes to story and games, but we wanted to take a bit of a different approach with this panel. And today I'm joined by some wonderful guests with very diverse experience in the way they work with video games and storytelling. So we have Aysheq Hussain, Jay Justice, and Rich Harper. So let's meet them. They're each going to tell you a little bit about themselves. So could we start with Aysheq? Hi, welcome.
Hi everyone, I'm Aysheq Hussain. I'm currently a student at Staffordshire University studying game design, but I'm currently interning at Tencent Games as a games operations intern, which is pretty much a very fancy name for a production intern. So we kind of manage a load of different game studios and projects and see how they're going. But yeah, I'm also a Bafta YGD finalist. So I've been into games since I was about 12, really passionate about it. So yeah.
Great, thank you. And I'm really excited to sort of share more about your experience, which I think there's some great opportunities for some of the people that might be watching. Next, Jay Justice. Jay, would you like to introduce yourself? Calling in from Thailand as well.
Hello, my name is Jay Justice. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an editor and consultant, as well as a game developer and costumer. So I work in comics, video games, and traditional publishing for literature. And I love video games, have since I was very small. And I'm looking at the year now, I'm like, goodness, have I been working in games for 15 years? That can't be right. I refuse to believe this. And yeah, I love the work that I do. I've mainly focused on creating accurate representation for marginalized characters. So if your game features a disabled character and the writers themselves may not have a disability, but they want to make their story more realistic, they'll hire someone like myself who has lived experience as a disabled person, as well as writing experience, to help consult on the story to make it more authentic and have the characters feel lived in and relatable and real. So I love getting to contribute to stories in that way and to make the worlds that we get to play in feel more like a world that we could actually be in.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jay. I'm really excited to hear more about your work because you work in so many different areas. So thank you for joining us. And next we have Rich Harper from Rare. Rich, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Rich Harper. My pronouns are he, him. I brand myself as a creative technologist. So currently I work for Xbox, a studio called Rare, as a technical artist. So I kind of live in that world between artists and designers and help bring their stories to life, building tools for them to kind of tell their stories. And before that, I worked as a research technologist. So I was helping our researchers tell the stories that they were finding about people's pasts. That's things across like archaeology and cultural heritage, and kind of brought all that together really. So I'm somebody that helps other people tell their stories.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've got quite a diverse panel in terms of experience. So it's going to be very interesting to hear about how story influences your work. But yeah, I thought it'd be interesting to just hear a little bit about what a typical work day looks like for you guys and what you enjoy most about your job. Would anyone in particular like to start? I'll go for Rich, as usual.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's kind of interesting. It's a silly way to say it, I suppose, but like every day is a school day because I have no idea what my job is going to be as day comes. So a lot of my work is reactionary. So as somebody is, so we work in game engines, right? So it looks very much like a video game you play, but we have a lot of controls that go with it. And our teams will be trying to tell those stories and come along, and they'll say hit problems or technologies, or they might want to help a player think in a certain way or feel a certain way, and they'll need a little bit of technology that helps them tell that. And that's my job. So they'll come to me and be like, hey Rich, we want to change the color of how this thing works in this particular place, or we want to make a creature look in a certain direction or emote in a certain way. And that's what people like me do, is we build that technology and those tools that help someone tell that story that becomes interactive.
Brilliant. So it's a full day of problem solving.
Absolutely. Every moment. And sometimes it's a quick fix and sometimes it's months.
Yeah.
It's so rewarding.
Oh, totally. Yeah, when I started in the games industry, I never watched the clock because it was just, yeah, it's so much fun. Jay, is there a typical day for you?
That's the fun part. So because I work as an individual person, as a contractor for different companies, I could start off with like a full schedule of meetings with different publishers and game studios and everything, and start off with, okay, here's a 500, page book. Give it a read and let us know what we should work on, what we should be adding. If there's a character that feels kind of unbalanced, then the next meeting will be a graphic novel that's an adaptation of a podcast. And they have to change some things because it's based on a copywritten work, but they're going to have their own stuff going on. And they want to make sure that the new female character they're adding has an equal amount of storytelling time, but they're not sure how to do that. And then the next thing will be NDA that I can't talk about. So we'll talk about a previous one. We'll talk about, oh, you're on the community council for this game and they're asking you to speak for an entire community. What should we do to fix this? How should it be improved? Like, give us your opinion. I'm like, it's not just my opinion. It's more like, this is a provable fact that people want to see characters who are non-binary and have pronouns that are not just he, him, or she, her. We want to see more representation, and getting the chance to influence games in that way is just momentous. And I kind of finish each day exhausted, but like really happy that I got a chance to make an impact, and hoping that I didn't miss something because I have so many things to do.
Yes, your slate is rather full, but it's such important work, I think, making sure that games actually do representation right. And I'm definitely going to come back and talk to you a bit more about that because it's so important. Aysheq, so you're a student at Staffordshire, but you're also interning at Tencent. So can you tell us a bit about what a typical day at Tencent is like for you?
Yeah, so I work in external production, which is a little bit different from like a normal production role, in that we have kind of a bird's eye view of all of our projects. So a lot of things is we get to see the latest builds that our studio sent us. So it's a lot of playing games, really. But we have to review stuff, send it back to them in a lot of different disciplines, actually. So sometimes it's a lot of narrative. They send us stories and things we have to read, give our feedback on those. From more production heavy stuff like timelines and things like that.
Excellent. And I imagine that experience is quite useful in any team projects at university as well. To sort of bring in what you've learned there to
yeah, definitely.
So that's the important thing, I think, to learn if you're working in games, is you're going to be working as part of a team. So everyone needs to pull their weight, but they need good kind of management of projects. So it's great that you're able to bring that. And I imagine you're teaching your fellow students quite a bit there. Actually, I'm going to stay with you. I do have a few questions for you about your experience, because it's interesting how you've got into games. So you've got a bit of experience with the Bafta Young Game Designer Award. So I believe you first entered back in 2016. Could you tell us a bit about your first entry to that and where things went from there?
Yeah, so I found out about the competition. I think I was in year 7, year 8 or something, quite young. So I entered when I was 12, and it was my computing teacher that told me about the competition. So we had kind of a game making class, and I really, really enjoyed that. So she told me about this competition, and there was 2 categories: the game concept and the game making. So I wanted to start off with game concept, because making the game was a little bit, it's quite a big step. And really, I just kind of came up with an idea. My dad mentored me through a lot of it. So I kind of came up with a nice idea for a game, because I've been playing a lot of platformer games. I grew up playing games like Little Big Planet and Ratchet and Clank. So I really enjoyed platformer games. So I got my idea, I sent it off, I did all the brainstorming, and then I was selected as a finalist, and I was overjoyed. So I went over to the Bafta HQ, and we got to speak to so many industry professionals. And it was at that point I realized, I really enjoy games. I want to be like some of the people making the games. So after that, when I was 14, I decided I wanted to enter the game making category. So I entered there, and I was lucky enough to be a finalist in the game making category when I was 14. I entered again when I was 17. This was in the game making category as well, for an Unreal Engine prototype I made. My last entry was when I was 18, and that was a prototype made from my original winning idea in when I was 12. So it was really, really good to see how the competition let me progress my skills and things. And yeah, seeing my idea actually come to life, after so many years, it was really, really great to see.
Oh, that's incredible. And the fact that, you've got right through sort of into the finals and you're winning, winning this each time. It must have done a great deal for your confidence in,
yeah, totally. I mean, 12-year-old me didn't think I'd be here, but I think it's a great opportunity especially when you're that young, to really get into game making and coming up with game ideas and stories.
Yeah, and it just shows that that you don't have to wait until you're at university to start making games. If you're interested in the games industry, there's so many free tools about to allow you to really get started now. So I'd recommend anyone here who's interested in making games, even from such simple software as Twine, which allows you to make interactive stories. You can start there and then move on to some of the engines. But great, and it's wonderful to hear how that has just those competitions have led to you now studying game design, studying games, and then also working in the industry. So fantastic. Jay, so it's very interesting to hear about your work. Now, comics and games are still very white, but compared to how they were in when I was growing up in the 90s, at least we're seeing change come in, and with the kind of makeup of people in the industry as well. But diverse characters can still be a bit embarrassingly stereotypical. With your cosplay, you do a great job of taking ownership of characters and showing how awesome they can look with a bit more melanin as well. I think, what sort of response do you get from your work from kind of cosplaying to your games work from maybe Black comics fans and gamers who don't often see themselves represented?
For anyone who happens to be watching who is blind or visually impaired, I'm a Black person. That's why she's asked me this question. Well, what's funny? I would say that Black people do see ourselves represented a lot because within our own communities, we're obviously active in creating art. It's more that the mass media tends to center non-marginalized people because that's what you typically see. It's like when you see a beauty pageant, you're going to see like the 1% of people who live in a country that are the lightest skin imaginable. Never mind that when you actually go to the country, everyone there is dark skinned. Good example is Brazil. Brazil has a massive Black population, and you only ever see white beauty queens from there. It's very strange. Anyway, what I would say is it definitely does a lot to empower others. I've actually been approached by young Black women who have said to me that, when I always thought about cosplaying, I didn't really think about it. Then I saw you doing Captain Marvel or doing one of your characters, and it made me think that I could do that too. And the same thing with game development. Even though, yes, the free tools are there, there's a lot of discouragement to young women and young Black people that you can't possibly see yourself in this kind of role because it's not for you. Never mind that games are for everyone. And that's been the Xbox tagline forever, that gaming is for everyone. It's more than just a tagline, though. It's something that is sustaining the industry. Without the diversity of people who want to play games and want to make games, the industry dies. So I really appreciate every initiative made by every company and every person to bring more people into the games industry from any background. And it really does make a difference to see someone at a higher platform than yourself who looks like you, who comes from the background you come from. I'm from New York City. We were not rich. It was a tough upbringing, and that doesn't have to define your entire existence. You can be anything, and it's really important to keep that going and to point out, like you said, Twine being there, and the fact that anyone can just download Unreal Engine and use the free stuff there. That's what I've been doing. You can absolutely teach yourself. It's all about the self-motivation and whatever you need to keep yourself going, whether it's mentorship, whether it's finding people who look like you, whether it's watching free GDC videos and looking at other game developers and seeing what they're doing. The tools are out there. It's just important for us as leaders in the community to help people find their way there.
Yeah,
that's how I feel about it.
So, my husband is South Asian, and he never saw any South Asian games characters growing up. And he wanted to dress as games characters at Halloween, but he was saying there was no brown characters for me to dress as. And it's great to sort of see you kind of stepping into characters that have typically seen as white, and so you can kind of do this differently. But so you're doing a lot of work with companies like sensitivity work. what else do you think game devs need to be doing to create really kind of authentic, diverse characters? I mean, obviously getting sort of people from different communities in to advise.
Advising is good. I also think it's not only on the developers, it's on the people who do the hiring to put people in this position who have the lived experience necessary to create authentic experiences through the game writing, through the artistry. Like having, artists who have the same background as what they're doing. Like a good example, and maybe not the best example, but I will say this. I like that the art director in charge of creating the Thai character for Overwatch 2 was a Thai person. I think that the design was really well done. My mother-in-law is Thai, and she loved seeing the character because she's like, oh, his pants are very accurate. Like, she was really impressed by the fact that they didn't just hire someone to go, yeah, this is fine. The people doing the art, this is their culture that they are bringing to the world. I like to see that kind of stuff be more prevalent as well. And I do appreciate when developers or writers or artists do reach out to the community that they're, creating content for. Before I was even a developer, I was just a comic book fan. I had made a post on Tumblr about a Black character in the comics with a terrible, unrealistic hairstyle. And the artist saw my post and was like, can I message you privately about this? And this is my first consultation. He actually asked me for some examples of how he should be drawing her hair, because he was a white man from England and he didn't really know how to draw a Black person's hair correctly. And so I gave him some examples and he fixed it. So that made me go, wow, people do care.
That's good that question's been asked, because I know a lot of games, Black male characters are all being done with the kind of Killmonger exact same hairstyle. So it's
it's like, great, you figured out something exists besides an afro. Can we diversify just a little bit more?
So I do have some more questions for you. You have so much we can talk about, but I'm just going to pop to Rich, and then I'll come back to him. So Rich, you're a technical artist at Rare. So story in games doesn't just come through dialogue and cutscenes. So I was wondering if you could tell us maybe some of the other ways that are there to tell players about the world and what's happening in it.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of the artistry that goes into storytelling isn't just about the story that's written down on a piece of paper. Like, words are one way of telling that story, and a lot of the time we have to translate what that written story is into something visual. And I think if you were to break down what storytelling is to a very human level, it's about helping people feel or helping people change and realizing a different way of thinking or a different way of being from it. So when we talk about storytelling and world building as a wider idea, it's about controlling is the wrong word, but curating an experience that people will go through. So if we're, me and you are talking right now, is I can listen to what you're saying and you can listen to what I'm saying, and we can alter the way we talk. But when we make a video game, we've got millions of people playing the same experience, and we can't respond to the way that they play it. So we have to do a lot of testing, and we have to do a lot of experimenting, really, and a lot gets thrown away. But it means when we're doing things like something as simple as drawing a path in the ground and placing trees and rocks, that's to help guide a player. And we'll put things like lights in the distance in a certain place. Like there are games that use, say, the color green on lights that help point a player in the right direction. They can help draw them in a certain direction that directs them. And it comes down a lot of the way to how do you make 50 million people all turn left at the right point. And there are so many small little parts that bring that up, and getting somebody to the right place at the right time, to be in the right mindset, to then have that experience, to have that moment of emotion where they feel for a character or they feel for themselves if they're playing as the character. And sometimes that's subtle things like changing a light's direction, or it's bringing a little bit more fog in, or changing the colors to be slightly colder over time so that things feel less warm, less inviting. We lean a lot on what things you've already experienced, like what Jay was saying about like cultural backgrounds. It matters massively. So it's for a studio like Rare, that with Xbox, is we have whole processes in place that we have to check that the story we think we're telling is an appropriate story for a particular market or for the whole world. So we don't want to, create a character that has these stereotypes that is offensive accidentally, or people would misunderstand. And that happens from such a low level so early on. And that applies to everything from architecture to the way we navigate spaces to even the language we use of like north, south, east, and west. Not all cultures use that. So that creates these barriers for accessibility and barriers for storytelling. And it's, yeah, there's so many of those little parts that all come together.
And
From
this is
placing
why
it's what, sorry?
Yeah, this is why playtesting is so important as well, isn't it? To see how all
absolutely
people interpret things differently as well.
Exactly, and it's we have to play test on different layers of people. So like we know the story, so when we play it, we have one set of expectations, but then we have our other teams play that, and then they're wider across the Xbox play it, and then across the whole of Microsoft play it, and then we have external teams that come in and play it, just to check that the story we think we're telling is the story that people are hearing and people are feeling.
Exactly. I was going to direct the next question to you, but I think it'd be interesting to hear sort of everyone's thoughts on it. But obviously, AI has exploded, and you know it's quite frightening for a lot of people, you know, in film and games. So how do you think AI's going to have an impact on how writers are used in game development?
So I guess I grew up with things like Star Trek, for example, and one of the things about Star Trek is you can go onto a holodeck. It's like a virtual world that you can go and create. And storytelling, that's the whole idea. You're on a spaceship in the middle of nowhere and people need stories, right? And in a lot of ways, AI allows people to bring worlds really quickly together. They can, you know, summon in a French cafe, and now you can go and stand in that place and create that story. But to do that quickly means taking a lot of other people's ideas and a lot of other people's creativity to bring it in place. And that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, which I think is reasonable. And it's awkward, I think, when something that was difficult, that was a process to create, becomes much simpler. Like the printing press made, you know, distributing books a lot easier. Is that changed the way that books were seen? But conversely, it doesn't make good storytelling still. So what we've seen with AI tools is, yes, they allow you to create something really quickly, but we're needing more and more people like concept artists who actually know how to translate an idea into something visual. Because I'm not a massively creative person from a storytelling point of view. So if I try and use these tools that are AI, I don't get anything that's culturally valuable, really, because my story isn't worth telling. But when you've got people that do have stories that are worth telling, I think sometimes these tools can help those people bring a story to the surface that otherwise would be difficult for them. You know, whether that's tools or technology or socioeconomic background.
Jay, did you have something to add to that? I noticed you moved. I
did. Okay. So first, I love the Star Trek analogy because I'm a huge Trekkie, but I do want to point out the difference between generative AI, which is the big problem, and the predictive AI. So generative AI creates images, text, video, and software code based on user prompts. Predictive AI uses a large data repository to recognize patterns across time. And my theory as a Trekkie is that holodecks are not based on generative, they're based on predictive.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, at this point in time, they have so much data that they can use that it doesn't make sense that they would be using anything like a prompt if this is going to be based on not just the memories of the person using it, but like, what do we have in our data banks on Paris 1932? Like, so you see what I mean? So I don't think that that's the best example for generative AI. And then the printing press, similarly, is copying something that you're giving it one for one. But generative AI, as it is being used now, is copyright infringement, it's theft, it's unauthorized use of medical photos of real people who did not want them to be used this way. So I think it has a lot of work to be done before it can be ethical to use. And in its current state, it is absolutely taking jobs. It is absolutely unfair. But I want people to know that the type of AI that most video games are using to create levels is not generative AI. Yeah. So if you see someone talking about using machine learning for game development, please do not believe that person. They're not talking about the kind of AI that is using gross images that weren't like consented to. There's more than one type. Research is good. Okay.
That's excellent.
So yeah, so my take is, as long as the AI you're using is ethical and not based on like literal theft, I think it's fine. And I think we should do more to make creative work more accessible and make it something that everyone can do without necessarily like ripping people off. I think that there's lots of possibilities for creating more jobs with it. But what did someone say on Twitter that I loved? I wish I remember their name. AI should not be creating the art for us. AI should be making it easier for the artists to make art. Yeah. Like, why can't the AI do my taxes? Why does the AI want to draw for me? I don't like this.
I think there's absolutely a whole panel to be had on AI.
Yes, so I'm gonna leave it there.
So we're going to go shortly to questions which have been popped into the chat box. One thing I was quite interested in is so, you know, you're obviously quite famous for your streaming as well, Jay. What makes a good game for streaming?
That's a good question. Okay, so some people don't like when you stream a game that has a big story component, because then you have your alerts of a new follower and it covers up the dialogue. But I think there's a good balance between a game that has a really engrossing story that makes the streamer like really invested, because you're getting to see an emotional reaction from the person who you're watching their stream, but also you, the viewer, get to like experience that story as well. So I think story games are fun. I think fighting games are fun. I don't think it's a bad game to stream, really. It depends on what you're in the mood for. That's why there's so much variety in content. Like I'm biased. I love RPGs. Yeah. So
I think people
for me, the best one is a game with a lot of action, but also a lot of story, so that you're going up and down the emotional roller coaster with the person that you're playing and you're streaming with, and those are always really fun.
Yeah. Absolutely, because it's the reaction, I think, that's so much fun for the
audience.
Yeah,
definitely. Whether you're good at it or bad at it, it's a good time.
Excellent. Okay, so I wonder if we should go through to some audience questions. Let's see if we've got and it's okay, there's some popping up here. So we've got Faith from Chestnut Center. How do you go from a game design to creating digital characters and scenery and the rest of the game? Does anyone want to take that? Aysheq, do you?
Sorry, I was having some Wi-Fi troubles. Could you say that again, please?
Yeah. So Faith has asked how you go from a game design to actually, making the game, to creating new characters and world.
To be honest, I just did a lot of learning myself. Do you mean like physically modeling the characters, or just coming up with the characters and things like that?
Think, so obviously not being able to talk directly to Faith, I think it's just wondering how a game gets made, maybe from that sort of initial concept. Be interesting maybe to share a bit, I think, about the sort of size of teams and roles as well.
Yeah, so for me at least, when I was making my prototype, I kind of took on a lot, because I had to do a little bit of everything. But usually it started with I came up with the original idea, and then I kind of started thinking about how I want the player to experience my game. And it's really just about having that vision in my head. Like, I could close my eyes and I could think of what the game, the final product would be. But I started drawing some concept art and things, and I got my dad to help me. So I'm not the best at drawing. But from there on, it was kind of just, okay, how can I make this, in 3D? So it took a lot of learning and a lot of YouTube tutorials and things like that. But eventually I got it to the point where, I can see my physical idea in front of me. I can give the controller to someone and they can play my game and enjoy it. And yeah, it was really rewarding to see.
Amazing. So, I mean, obviously Aysheq has created games from initial concept to doing all of this work himself. Larger studios might have quite a number of people with very, very specific roles, depending on the size of the studio, working on the game. I did know one guy whose job was making trees for a long time. Yeah, we've got a question now. This is a how long is a piece of string sort of question. How long does it take to make a game? And I think you're all going to have quite different answers based on your experience.
How long is the game? Like, what kind of game is it? Is it a match 3 game?
So you're working on some games, you know, you're working on something entirely yourself as well, aren't you?
Yeah, so if it's like a game where it's just me and a couple of friends, we can probably bang it out in like a month. Because we'd like, if you're like, I did Code Coven intro to game making and learned Unreal Engine, and I don't recommend it, but we had to make our final game in a very short amount of time.
That's brilliant.
So yeah, if you can do it in a week for like a game jam, but like again, don't recommend it. It's stressful.
Exactly. And Rich, you're working at Rare and obviously doing, you know, big kind of open games.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think the answer comes down to what your budget is, and it's like kind of a boring way of answering it. But a lot of games will, you know, you can make a game yourself. I made games when I was a kid, and it had no budget, right? We had my time as the budget. But other times is you've got investors, is you've got, you know, we have Microsoft behind us, right? So we've been making Everwild, our current game, for I think nearly 9 years now. And when is it done is when it's done. And we have a bunch of things we want it to achieve. We have ways we want people to feel about it and experience it. And we don't know how long that takes. We don't know what the right way of doing it is. That's what prototypes are for. It's what the experimentation play is for. And sometimes that's open-ended and you're lucky, and sometimes it's not. And you know, sometimes you go, I know exactly what I want my game to do and I've got the time to do it. So yeah, it could be like game jams, they're weekends, they're weeks, they're months. But sometimes they're a very, very, very long time. So it all depends.
We've got quite a fun question here, which is for everyone, which is, you know, what is your favorite game, whether that's your favorite game of all time or your favorite game in terms of storytelling. Jay, do you want to start with that?
Oh boy. Okay. So favorite game in terms of storytelling is probably the same as favorite game, just to play. Mass Effect 2 had a really nice, tight, self-contained story arc, and it had the branching narratives, it had the different missions. I love a game that lets you like kind of, because when I was a kid, choose your own adventure books were my favorite. I had every single one I could find in the English language and a couple in Spanish.
I really nerded out when I met Ian Livingstone for the first time because I'd read all of his.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, Mass Effect 2 was really great for the storytelling and also just for the fun, the action, the romance, the drama, just everything about it made me really happy. It's part of a trilogy. I do recommend playing the whole thing, but in terms of story, that one for me had the best like tight story that was just so well done.
Absolutely. Aysheq, do you have a favorite game? I always think it's like it's a really tough question, this, because mine changes continuously.
I think in terms of storytelling, obviously no one should have played this game because it's a 17 plus. But I really enjoyed Titanfall 2 because you know the campaign mission. You start off with this big mech robot, and you think of him just as, you know, it's just a game mechanic, and then at the end of the story, you become so like attached and emotionally attached to this robot when you see him go in. And I think it's a really great narrative. You really just get attached to, you know, just a big robot, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, but I think my other game would have to be Little Big Planet. I'd absolutely loved that as a kid, and I think that's what gave me a little taste of game design. Their level creator at the time, it kind of blew my mind. Being able to create something and give it to my mum to play. Bless her, she was probably the most worked. She worked so hard as a QA tester on all my little creations, but yeah.
I think by the way everyone on the panel went like this, I think we all share love for Little Big Planet as well. Rich, what's your favorite?
Yeah, I think mine would be Day of the Tentacle. It's quite an old game from a while ago, but it's a game I don't think we could make anymore because it's a puzzle type game, and you've got like you play 3 characters, one in the past, one in the present, and one in the future, and you have to move items backwards and forwards through time to solve this puzzle of how do you get all of your friends home. And there's so many little parts of those puzzles that I remember being a kid just sitting there going, I need it to rain. How do I make it rain? And then you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, I washed the car. You wash the car, it makes it rain. That's those little stories of stories that get told. And then you can't go on your computer because it's, you know, the middle of the night and your parents look, you get in trouble then, right? But then you play it and you're like, yes, I've washed the car and now it's rained. And it's just those cathartic moments. But there's wikis now, right? So there's that temptation to just go and look it up that kind of spoils a lot of those little bits. And it's something I would love to be able to do going forward, is making puzzles and games that are like that, but you don't know the answer yet as it changes. But
absolutely. I mean, it used to be, before the internet, we had to just go into school and see if anyone else had got around various problems and how they did it. I'd say my favorite is Mario. Do you know, Mario Kart 8 is something that I just I'm playing it so much with my daughter at the moment. I mean, obviously there's loads of games I love the story, but that's just something that I just get so much joy from with my family. We're getting loads of questions. We're not going to have time to go through all of these, but what have we got? Right. So Jack at Dixon's Spazzacoli has said, are there any apps or websites to help you learn to make games? So I think we're going to go to Aysheq actually with this one, because obviously, you know, you really learned very young. What did you find really helped you?
To be honest, I kind of started quite hard, like on websites like Udemy and Pluralsight. That was mostly down to my dad, but a lot of things were just YouTube tutorials. There's so many resources on YouTube for getting into game engines, for Unreal and Unity. Those are the two that I kind of started with. Unreal at a later date, but even things like Scratch, that's what I started off with. Really simple, just Scratch games. But I think it just depends what you want to create. But yeah.
And yeah, I mean, everyone's so lucky in that there's just all of the information is out there just to be taken now. I think one of my former students set up a YouTube channel teaching Game Maker, and it's hugely popular, and he's just really enjoying sharing his sharing their experience of game making with everyone. Okay. Ooh, Rohan from Life Academy has asked if any of you made a game in 24 hours. I guess this is like a game jam type question. Has anyone done such a short game jam?
Yeah, we do internal game jam.
Because all I did was the start screen, the menu, and the voice actions. But like I've witnessed the meltdown that occurs.
Yeah, game jams can be intense. Aysheq, did you have a comment there?
Yeah, I did a game jam when I started uni, and yeah, the crunch is quite bad, but it's really fun with the team. And
yeah,
I think there's something about doing a game jam. I think you can take it in that crunch way of going, I've got 24 hours, oh my god, or you can go, it's going to be terrible, but it'll be fun. You know, like sometimes we do things like our work ones is we're working on Everwild at the moment, and that's like unreleased, but we do these little game jams. I was like, let's take the boats from Sea of Thieves and put them as little remote control boats in our lake in Everwild. And we just to play. And it was fun because we had little cannons and we can sink each other's boats. And I think there's quite a lot of questions in the chat about like what tools are people using, what programs are people using. And I would say it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're making something and you're putting it in front of somebody, whether that's a piece of paper that's like a paper-based board game, whether that's a game in a playground that, you know, but it's about interacting with other people and storytelling. So it's anything. It's kind of the answer, really. It's like whatever's accessible to you, whatever you have in front of you.
Absolutely. One of the most important things I think I'd like to say as well is, you know, make sure you're making your game fun. When I taught students, they all thought that the job as a game designer was to try and outwit the player and make the job of completing the game as difficult as possible for them. So never forget that making games is about creating a fun experience for the people playing it. You're not trying to trip them up and cause them a great deal of stress in playing your game. If you're stressing them out too much, yeah. Okay, there are lots and lots of questions. What you got? So someone's actually asked if any of you play Sea of Thieves. I imagine you have to play Sea of Thieves quite a bit, Rich.
I'm terrible at it. So it's I only like help develop every now and again because it's not my main project I work on. But I do have my Sea of Thieves ship with my rare flag sails, and I mostly play community events as comedic relief, shall we say, because I'm rather terrible at it. But yeah,
I always think it's fun to see what players do with what you've created, because they can often just do something that the designers just absolutely did not expect at all. Absolutely. And it creates this whole other element to the gameplay.
That's why I love the community games. Like one of my friends runs charity events and like with streaming, and we were one of the events was towing 2 ships. So we had 2 ships at the front and then one that wasn't allowed to use its sails but would harpoon the others, kind of like Star Wars pod racing. And it's just like, it's that playing a new game. It's doing whatever you want to do within that space. And I think that's one of the things that makes, like someone mentioned about like Minecraft, is they are those games that are sandbox games where the player and their community brings the story to that space.
This has gone so quickly. We've only got a couple of minutes left. I'm just going to pick one last question for everyone. And I think Elizabeth from Claydon High has asked, what's your favourite part of developing a game? You know, is it the start? Is it when you're really in the meat of it? Or when is it, you know, when the game is out there? So Aysheq.
I think for me, it's as soon as I get like a solid experience out and give it to someone and watch the reaction. So I remember I took a little bit of time off college while I was developing my game. Thankfully, they gave it me off. But I got it to the prototype stage where I just needed to get rid of all the bugs. So I remember, you know, I come into college, giving it to everyone, and I'd just be sat there watching them play. And it was just amazing to see them having fun. But it was also quite interesting to see, oh, well, he didn't do what I wanted him to do, or they didn't do what I wanted them to do. So then, like Rich says, I started, how can I make the players do and know exactly what they need to do? So it was quite interesting to learn all of that as well.
Yeah. So yeah, seeing like players actually experience a world you've created, I imagine it. Yeah, that is going to be a favorite part. Jay, what's your favorite part?
So with my job, I go a lot of back and forth with other writers and editors on hammering out details and changing narrative paths for characters. And that last pass through when we finally reached a consensus as to what is going to happen in this game, and it's final and it's done. Like getting to see the players play it is also good, but because in my games that I've worked on, it's a choose thing. Like the player may never see the dialogue that I'm writing. Or they may never get to this point in the dialogue tree with the character that has been created. Just knowing that, okay, we've done it. It's over after like however many months. We've reached a point where everyone is really happy with the work that we've done. That to me is like the most satisfying. The rain has stopped and the sun has come out on top of the mountain moment.
You're ready to let your baby go at that moment.
Yes.
Excellent. And Rich, what's your favorite part?
I think because a lot of my time I spend working with other developers, I think it's removing the barriers for them. So a lot of the time I'm building tools for people, and just being able to see someone that's ludicrously creative and expressive be able to do that so much easier. So I'm taking away the complexity of tools or giving them new tools that allows them to just do that storytelling, do that. I want to be able to just put these bits together and not have to care about the things in the process. That's my favorite part. And then just them being like, yes, I love it. And then you come back to them and they're like, more features. And it's
brilliant. Yeah, enabling people to create worlds. That's
absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
Right, well, this has absolutely flown. So I'd like to thank everyone who's tuned in for joining us for this National Literacy Trust event for Storytelling Week. Just a reminder to you all that the resources are available on the website, and that right now you can enter the very same competition that Aysheq entered, the Bafta Young Game Designers Award. So, do take that opportunity. You've seen where it can lead. So there's lots of information about that on the Bafta Young Game Designers website. But I'd just like to say a huge thank you to our absolutely brilliant finalists, all very different experience in the games industry. And it's been absolutely wonderful to hear from you. And I'm sure you've inspired a lot of people today to follow in your footsteps. So thank you all. And goodbye from us. We hope you've enjoyed the session.